Bishop on Air's early. Check that out. Yep. We're doing it live and getting out there a little bit earlier this morning because there's a lot going on at the Illinois State House. And I do have a full-time job outside of doing this from my home studio, and I really do appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning with Bishop on Air. Real early, Luke says. Yeah, I know. But when the legislature starts at 8:30 in the morning, and you got to be there from before it starts to after it ends, kind of makes for a busy day. But I wanted to get stuff out to you guys. Of course, we'll take a look at what happened yesterday at the legislature. They canceled that House Judiciary Criminal Committee, which had that slew of gun bills in. So they didn't even get to that yesterday. But we will talk a little bit about firearm policy, especially in Illinois, and revisit what happened with J-Car a while back, Illinois State Police responding, and a preview of an economic impact study of sorts on local tax revenues from the prohibition of selling certain types of firearms. So fascinating stuff. We'll have more on that. But also, we got to talk about the grocery tax and Governor J.B. Pritzker again, essentially saying that, hey, if local governments want to implement a grocery tax, they can. But he also says he took the idea from Republicans. Republicans pushing back, saying that their idea goes a step further than what the governor has. So we'll talk about that as well. So that's just some of what's coming up here with Bishop on Air. Appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we got much more coming up here with Bishop on Air. Greatly appreciate you guys. You're the wind beneath my wings. Illinois State Police responding to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and their objection that they filed against those gun ban registration rules. Welcome back. Bishop on Air with you each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be sure to follow along with me on all social media platforms. Best place to do it is X, which is much more immediate. Of course, we had the social media down yesterday. I think Facebook was down for a clip. I didn't really realize it because I'm not on Facebook all day. But regardless, just search any of the social media companies and you'll be able to find me, Bishop on Air. But like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here on YouTube as well, and join us each and every weekday morning. So yesterday, the Illinois legislature did not have the House Judiciary Criminal Committee with a whole bunch of gun legislation. If they did, we would be talking about that right now. However, we've got something else. Illinois State Police Director Brendan Kelly responding to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules in their objection that they officially filed. And if you recall, the whole saga of the state's gun ban being enacted January 10th of 2023, the lawsuits that followed, we've tracked that. But we also tracked the rules-making process. So when the government, the legislature, passes a law, it typically comes with administrative rulemaking. So they pass the law to say these are the definitions, and then they hand it to the administration, in this case, Illinois State Police, who then have to craft administrative rules to execute the law. Sometimes there's a lot of questions about definitions or how things are to be interpreted, or, are they crafting law with rulemaking rather than just sticking to the law in their rulemaking? So a lot of questions there. And if you recall, there was confusion and some looming misunderstandings of what the definitions were in the Protect Illinois Communities Act, even down to what is an assault weapon. So you've got questions about different components of firearms and whether they were going to be regulated, and even whether or not people had to regulate their magazines, because you had mixed messaging when it comes to the registration requirements. Again, the registration requirements was supposed to be fulfilled by December 31st of 2023. Here we are, March 6th of 2024, and looking at the most recent data that Illinois State Police have compiled for the gun registry, they have not updated it. So these are a refresh of today. The last numbers they provided were from January 31st, a full month after the deadline of December 31st. And they have not updated them since, and here we are now into March. So interesting. But if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, the legislative oversight body for the rulemaking process, they officially objected to the rules. Now, that didn't block the rules from being implemented, but it was an official objection logged into the record, and Illinois State Police were required to respond within a set number of days. And this came after the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules ordered state police to hold 3 public hearings across the state. And if you go back to my channel, you can see those public hearings and overviews of what was discussed and asked and answered. But still, even after that, there were a lot of unanswered questions. But Illinois State Police Director Brendan Kelly filing in the Illinois Register, which if you're not familiar with what the Illinois Register is, it's essentially what you read every night when you go to bed, right? No, it's thousands of pages every year that are printed about, public notice of state government actions, rules that are being filed, proposed rules, emergency rules. If the governor issues an executive order, for instance, it gets published in the Illinois Register. It's real dense. It's a lot of reading. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. For instance, this one right here on page 2,991 of the 8th issue this year of the Illinois Register. Again, it's the 8th issue this year. They're already at 3,000 pages plus. But it has here, Agency Illinois State Police, Firearm Owner Identification Card Act. And it says at the meeting on January 16th, 2024, and we covered this, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules objected to the Illinois State Police proposed rulemaking title, Firearm Owner Identification Card Rule, because the rulemaking does not meet the criteria under state law, which requires a rule to be simple and clear so that the rule can be understood by the persons and groups the rule affects, and the rule contains definitions that are subject and open to broad interpretation by enforcement jurisdictions, which leaves the regulated public without clear direction on how to comply with the rule. So it went on, and this is a response from Brendan Kelly, the Illinois State Police Director. He talked about the committee's points, and the rulemaking doesn't meet the criteria, which requires a rule to be simple and clear so that the rule can be understood by the persons and groups the rule affects. The department disagrees, Director Kelly says. Illinois State Police took extensive steps to make the rule as simple and clear as possible so it could be understood by the persons and groups the rule affects within the language of the law, including but not limited to holding no less than 3 public hearings in 3 different locations across the state, adding no less than 11 definitions to the proposed rulemaking, adding a detailed guide to the website, adding 78 frequently asked questions to its website, and answering and responding to hundreds of public comments questions during the rulemaking process. ISP staff are very transparent, he says, responsive and diligent. The Illinois State Police has received more positive feedback about its efforts and updates than negative since the first notice period ended. Second, the committee's point that the rule contains definitions that are subjective to open, broad interpretation by enforcement agencies, thereby leaving the regulated public without clear direction on how to comply. The department also disagrees. The Illinois State Police reiterates that it took extensive steps to provide the regulated public with clear direction on how to comply. Again, Illinois State Police held no less than 3 public hearings in 3 different locations throughout the state, added no less than 11 definitions to the proposed rulemaking, and added a detailed guide to its website. Added 78 frequently asked questions to its website, and responded hundreds of public comments. Essentially, he just said that in the paragraph above. Overall, the department has incorporated all suggestions requested by the committee, except one change related to record retention and the constitutionality of the statute, which the committee acknowledged has never been addressed in prior rules. The department appreciates the input from JCAR, stakeholders, and the public in developing rules that it implemented in the act. So again, you've got Secretary of the Illinois State Police Director Brendan Kelly issuing this letter, and that's being filed in the Illinois State Register. So what's fascinating also is, and I got to get a little bit more information on this, but I've got a preliminary report that was shared with me about the economic impacts to local governments from the prohibition of the sale of certain types of firearms with, the ban from the Protect Illinois Communities Act. And essentially what this report does, and I'm going to get some reaction to it at some point this week, if not today. I'll try to talk with members of the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability, which apparently put this together. That's a bipartisan joint group of state legislators that have economists report to them on things like pensions and tax receipts and whatnot. Important group in a lot of reports if you want to know how state dollars are performing, your tax dollars. But this report, it looks at the fiscal impacts that impact the states from changes in taxes collected for firearms and ammunition. Distributed from the federal government. So apparently the federal government has some funds that they distribute to the state based off of firearm sales. Reduced revenues possible with the banning of certain types of rifles and other different categories of firearms. And we're talking about potentially millions of dollars in lost revenue. There's also the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with some dollars that are appropriated. And is that being impacted? So again, I've got a preliminary report here that I'm hoping to get more detail and more reaction to. But once we get this all shored up, I'll be sharing that with you as well. All right, it is Bishop on Air, and looks like other things happening across the country. You've got Louisiana now being, the 28th state to allow for constitutional carry. Let's see if we can pull up that map that Firearm Policy Coalition put together on Louisiana now being the 28th states for permitless carry. As Fox News reports, you've got the southern state putting it on the books. A landmark victory, 28th state with constitutional carry on the books. Law-abiding citizens should never have to seek government permission to safeguard themselves and their families, according to the governor who signed that law. And if you look at the map that Firearm Policy Coalition put together, 28 states, permitless carry. And you can see that Illinois is slowly being, surrounded by permitless carry. What's important to note is Illinois was the last state to allow any kind of carrying of a firearm outside the home, permit or not. So we had to implement that because of lawsuits that were filed, essentially saying that the Second Amendment was being violated. So Illinois, you've got states all around that are essentially constitutional carry, right? Permitless carry. I've heard people say that the Second Amendment is your permit to carry a firearm, but regardless, state policies differ, and that map kind of shows you how that looks across the country. So just also wanted to give you that update as well here with Bishop on Air. Greatly appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Follow along with Bishop on Air. Go to bishoponair.com for more detail and links, including how you can join the Discord chat. A lot of activity in there. I don't monitor it. All right, I'm too busy to monitor a Discord channel, but a lot of people talk to each other there. And on Fridays, we typically open that up for you to join the conversation. So join Discord, and it's a way for you to interact with the show when we are live. And I know I'm live a little early this morning, but I wanted to get some stuff out for you guys before I have to skedaddle and head off to work. So appreciate it. And as always, stay tuned with more from Bishop on Air. Governor J.B. Pritzker says he took a cue from Republicans in wanting to eliminate the state's grocery tax permanently. Welcome back, Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out each and every weekday morning. Yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker was in Morton, Illinois, talking about an award program for some food pantries and such, and he was asked off topic about the grocery tax. Now, for background, the grocery tax, it's 1% in Illinois. You had in fiscal year 2022, if you recall, the governor reduced that grocery tax to zero for a full 12 months in his budget that year. Then it kicked back in. He said it was because of inflation and whatnot. But in his budget proposal he shared last month, he said that he wants to eliminate the grocery tax for good. And then you saw the opposition stack up, and the opposition included the Illinois Municipal League that says they could be out local governments $325 million, and there's nothing in the governor's proposal, at least, that would backfill those lost dollars. So the Illinois Municipal League, mayors across the state, criticizing the governor's proposal. Last week, the governor was asked about this, and he said local communities can implement their own tax. He was asked about it again yesterday with some follow-up questions, and then he also shared, hey, it was a Republican idea. He's just taking their cue. Here is Governor J.B. Pritzker from yesterday in Morton.
They will have the ability to reinstate a grocery tax locally if that's what they want to do. But this is about local control. And also eliminating a regressive tax on everyone in Illinois, but especially those who are disadvantaged, those who are often left out and left behind. So I think we need to cut taxes, especially for people who are just trying to go get food at a grocery store. It is time for us to eliminate it. I want to say one other thing. We're one of only 13 states left in the country that has a grocery tax. All the other states have gotten rid of it. And you ought to go look at the map and see which states are remaining. But, I mean, we're behind West Virginia at getting rid of a grocery tax, just to give you an example. We should be leading in this country. Illinois is a state where we care deeply about working families, about those who are in low-income families, and frankly, those who don't have a job and may just have a little bit of money and go to the grocery store. And yeah, it's only $1 for every 100 that you spend, but that means a lot to people at the lowest end of the spectrum in terms of income. And so I'm, pleased and proud to have put this proposal forward, and always happy to talk to people about how we can help them locally to replace revenue. But the reality is I put $1.3 billion of state money, more than in past years, into local hands. And that's on top of billions of dollars that the state already sends to local governments.
But does this put local governments, local municipalities in a position of having to either give the appearance of raising a tax on their own or having to cut services?
So they're not willing to step forward and say that they want a grocery tax at the local level. They want the state government to do it, so they don't have to admit that that's what they want. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm saying that they're going to look like they're either raising a tax or they're cutting services because the state has taken away.
Go talk to the Republican state legislators who, when I eliminated for a year during the highest inflation time that we've had in my lifetime, or at least in a long time, when I eliminated the grocery tax for a year, the Republican legislators said, you should make that permanent. They yelled at me. They held press conferences telling me that I'd done something terrible by only eliminating it for a year. And I thought about it for a long time and thought, yeah, this is the most regressive tax, the tax on food. So we should eliminate it. And I took their advice.
So Governor J.B. Pritzker saying local communities should raise the tax if they want, because local communities say if the statewide grocery tax, which goes back to local communities, if it gets eliminated, they're out across the state $325 million. And then he says, after more pushback, he says, it was a Republican idea anyway, so I just took their cue. Well, Republicans had the idea, and a bill that's filed in the current General Assembly from State Senator Don DeWitt, it would backfill the lost grocery tax revenue with money from the General Revenue Fund, and in particular, money that typically should go to local governments through the Local Government Distributive Fund. Now, quick background on this. Back decades ago, when Illinois implemented an income tax, an agreement was made with states and local governments that local governments would not be able to have their own income tax on top of a state income tax. Because imagine if Chicago had the ability to tax your income on top of the state income tax on top of the federal income tax, right? I mean, just imagine that. So the agreement was that the state would give 10% of income tax receipts to local governments across the state. But they haven't done that. For decades, it's been stuck at like 6% or so, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what. But Republicans, their idea is to eliminate the grocery tax, but backfill that lost revenue with the likes of the local government distributive fund. Governor J.B. Pritzker, as you heard there, he said he's willing to talk more about how to fill those dollars for local governments. But again, the governor's spending is at $52.7 billion proposed. He says there's a $300 million surplus in his proposed budget, so maybe that could be what it is. But then that would just be no surplus in the budget whatsoever, according to the governor. But he said, go talk to Republicans. I did. I talked with State Senator Jason Plummer from Edwardsville, a Republican, and he reacted to the governor, and in particular, pointing out that, the governor's talking about local control, which Plummer said is surprising.
Well, it's the first time I've ever heard Governor Pritzker in support of any sort of local control. He seems to try to control all the decisions from Springfield. I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is a small piece of the budget. The bigger problem is the governor's spending. We're at $53 billion now. Spending continues to increase. And a lot of that money is based on things that are regressive taxes or one-time money. And those really trouble me, and I wish they'd trouble the governor and he'd quit playing politics with them.
And Plummer went on to talk about the governor's spending and all of the unfunded mandates that are on local communities and how that just stacks up and causes more frustration for local communities and also increases costs for taxpayers.
Well, the problem that the municipalities see is the longer Governor Pritzker's in office, the more unfunded mandates we push down onto our local communities. And their budgets just can't support the unfunded mandates from Springfield. They're looking for relief. If the governor wants to give them relief, we need to look at getting rid of a lot of the mandates we put on them, from law enforcement training to everything else, because the small communities in my district simply can't afford Springfield, Illinois.
So Jason Plummer, again, Republican from Edwardsville, reacting to the governor and his comments about the grocery tax. So wanted to get that out for you, but also just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of what could happen today at the state legislature. They've got several measures in a House Elementary and Secondary Education Committee that they're going to be taking up, possibly. That's at 8:30 this morning, by the way. Then they've got the Senate Higher Education Committee could be talking about giving community colleges the ability to do bachelor's programs. That's interesting. Senate Democrats have a news conference talking about their legislative priorities. You've got others looking at higher education. The Senate Labor Committee, they could meet as well to talk about a whole bunch of things impacting labor. You've got a news conference with the Republicans who are going to be discussing policies that impact workers with developmental and intellectual disabilities. You've also got an interesting journalism preservation task force that met, and a proposed law, the Journalism Preservation Act, which we may hear a lot more about tomorrow, retouch on this tomorrow, but they've got a 1:30 hearing this afternoon, which the way the bill reads, it essentially says that digital publications for news can report to state governments their view counts and then get a stipend or something like that. I think the language they use is in exchange for a remitted journalism usage fee payment. So interesting. Then you've got the Senate Revenue Committee meeting and a special committee on criminal law and public safety. So a lot of committee hearings, a lot of news conferences. We'll do what we can to boil it down for you, what happened tomorrow. But also yesterday, you had former Governor Pat Quinn. He addressed the media with State Representative Ryan Spain to push for more ethics changes. And in particular, they want a constitutional amendment to say that you can have a citizen-led initiative to change state law. So a Democrat former governor, a Republican state representative. What kinds of things are we going to see from Democrats at the State House when it comes to ethics reforms? That'll be an interesting question to see play out. But you also have other headlines like the state Senate approving the Chicago school board's maps. You've got the Illinois State Board of Education asking for more money, and diversity recruiters with the state schools asking for continued funding as well. So that all happened yesterday. Again, if you follow me on social media, in particular X, search Bishop on Air, and you can stay updated with all of these stories and more. Appreciate you guys being with me each and every weekday morning here with Bishop on Air. Of course, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and stay tuned for more, always with Bishop on Air. All right, guys, started early and a bit more of a short program just because I got to get to work. So appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Got to talk about ham radio sometime this week, maybe Friday. We'll take a look at that, or maybe early next week or something. I'm not sure. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Randall said he didn't get a notification today. Randall, I started at like 7:10 this morning. I don't know if that has something to do with it. Another user says, oh yeah, ethics lol. You've got Doobie Lou in the chat. You've got AS3SXP, Captain Mike, Keith, Save the Humans, Spectrix, Travis, Radar Wolf. You guys, I greatly appreciate you. AD, he asks what happened with all the weed tax money. Maybe I do a segment on that, because if you look at the tax breakdown of that nearly 42% tax on cannabis, it goes to all different places, including state pensions. So anyways, all right, guys, have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. I got a skedaddle. All right, be safe.
You